Perfect, perfect. And now we are live, guys, and the webinar is being recorded as well. So, welcome to today's webinar, guys. And today's webinar, we're going to talk about WordPress. That's right, our own websites and how we can secure them. 70% of the websites are used on WordPress, and chances are that everyone watching this webinar is having at least one WordPress website. Now, initially, when I started blogging, I didn't know about security. I didn't know about any sort of secure plugins or the security measures, the steps to take to secure my website. And as a result, in 2017, when I first started my journey in digital marketing, I started by starting my first blog. I was a content writer. I was writing content. I was like, it was going great. Then something bad happened. As you might have guessed it, my blog was hacked. Yes, my blog was hacked, and suddenly I opened it. My WordPress login wasn't being opened, and when I search it on Google, that site my website domain name.com, and it showed me all Japanese or Chinese keywords on it. And I was like, wait, I didn't write these Chinese Japanese articles. I only know English. Then what happened? I Googled about it. I found out that it's like a Japanese or keyword hack or something. I really didn't know what was happening. I tried to contact my host. Back then it was SiteGround, and SiteGround straight up refused. They're like, it's your problem. You deal with it. Until then, we can't do anything. Your hosting is like suspended or something. I was like, I didn't know where to go. I'm like a new digital marketer. My site is hacked. And I was like, damn, I really didn't know where to go. I started Googling stuff. I started going around, and somehow I had to remove all the data. I didn't have any backups because I didn't know what was it back then. But right now, I'm experienced. I've been hacked before, and I know I have to take backups of my site. I have to secure my WordPress site. I have to do all sorts of things. And I'm sure you can relate with it because I can see comments coming in. Something similar happened to me. My admin rights were revoked too. If you're starting out, guys, it happens to everyone. That's right. It happens to everyone. And here's how. I want to do this webinar so that we can prevent this. We have invited one of the best cybersecurity people I personally know. His name is Tamagna, and he is the founder of Data Secure, a company that deals with cybersecurity products and training. And they have launched a product on PitchGround as well that if you're a business owner, you should be checking it out, guys. More about the product later. Tamagna here is here to talk about WordPress and securing your WordPress website. Joining him along is Anshul from Data Secure as well. So Tamagna, Anshul, welcome to this webinar. I'm super excited to have you here.
Great. Thank you so much, Minak. It was a very warm welcome. Yeah, especially during this winter play season. We really enjoy having a warm welcome. So thank you. It's really excited to be here. Yeah, as I say that I'm really great that I got connected with you guys, and together along with PitchGround we're trying to obviously do this kind of events which can help the larger community, right? Because one thing as we keep discussing, right, that security is not a one person's job, right? We definitely need everybody to be aware of security. So our whole intention of doing this kind of webinars, and obviously we do this again and again, this so that we can build this sense of security across everybody who are into this IT space. What do's and what don'ts are there. So it will help you as well as, and overall it will help every one of us to protect our data, right? So that's our idea. So yeah,
Absolutely.
if you don't have anything, we can simply just get started. And
Yes. And guys,
great.
please stay till the end because this webinar is going to be insightful. If you have notes, take notes, and the replay will also be provided to you. No worries on that. If you're missing out, if you don't have notes handy, it's all right. The replay also will be provided to you. And Tamangna, let's get into it. I think there's too much talk right now, so let's
Awesome,
get into the
awesome,
practice. Yeah,
awesome, awesome. Great, great, great. So let me just go ahead, share my screen,
perfect.
and I think you have to give me the permission to share.
Sure. You
Is
should
that
be able to share your screen right now.
okay? Yes, it looks brilliant. So, so yes, I think guys, we have a very exciting day. I mean, we have been kind of preparing for this session. As you know that this is such a big thing, right? WordPress is actually one of the major market share in terms of having websites all over the world. So we are very excited about this session. And with me, I have Anshul. Anshul is the hacker in the house, I would say. He's one of the coolest hacker we have. Although he looks very, simple. Don't go by his looks. He is actually, I mean, his skill sets are, beyond, measure. Okay, so what we have planned today is, a lot of interesting things. One is obviously we will talk about some introductions in terms of why this is important, what kind of trends we are seeing in terms of security, what kind of attacks have been happening and stuff like that. Then we would love to also get into some demo. We actually have prepared some interesting simulation of how typically probably a hacking a WordPress site can be hacked, right? So and that's purely Anshul's credit. He has put a lot of effort to build an amazing demo where we would like to show you a live in action how a WordPress site can be hacked. And when I say hacking, if you don't know about this stuff, please just to set your expectation. Uh, in movies it shows differently that hackers like really cool, but when you saw it, you will realize that this is such a simple thing. Okay,
Come on,
and
you're a
that's
cool person too. Yeah, in real life. Yeah.
and it's very scary because when we actually show this demo, you realize that this is so simple to hack, and since it's so simple, a lot of times you don't realize that your site might get compromised in such a 3 or 4 easy steps, right? So we definitely want to show you that part, and then we eventually we go to obviously what are the mitigations we can do, and we will also recommend certain tools. Fewer tools are available, is free, early, and open source and stuff like that, which you can use on your own at your own from your side to protect your own websites, right? So this is pretty much how we were planned for this entire session. So I'm just gonna make it to the slide mode and let me know if you are able to see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Cool. So yes, as probably you already know, right? The WordPress is one of the major CMS, right? Majority of the websites, almost half of the world website, is actually well, the statistics vary based on what research organization have done this research, but everybody predominantly said that the majority of the websites built in today's world is still in WordPress. Uh, they have huge market share, uh, and millions and billions of websites are there. And the reason for this popularity is definitely is they have a lot of plugins built by the community for the community, which is which is very useful. So, and today, when you're talking about one side is no code, low code platforms, right? Come on, WordPress is there for years, right? So, this trend, WordPress is like, have created this trend, I would say. My understanding is, where you can simply, within a couple of minutes or probably within a day's time, you can create a brilliant website and, and launch your product or company website, right? So it's actually a huge market share, and that's why we definitely see this is a possible threat, right? From a security point of view, the moment I see this, say if there is a core component and if we can find a vulnerability there, that means now by principle, all this millions of website is vulnerable, right? So that's as simple as that. So that's why it's very scary, and this is so important that we all should know about the nitty gritty of it. Few of the recent data breaches we come across, and you can see just if you Google for it, you will definitely see all this references or these data points. But you can see that these are all not very old, very as latest as probably December, which is last month, where millions, not even 1 million, 2 million, we're talking about say 13 million, right? Cyber attack from 16,000 IP target, 4 vulnerable WordPress plugins, and 15 themes, striking 1.6 million websites, right? And there are some other so different plugins, different themes has been exposed, has been attempted to be exploited, actually have some vulnerabilities which has been breached. We keep seeing this again and again. So what I'm trying to say, this is a never ending issue, right? Because you need to understand WordPress is evolving, and not only WordPress, the plugin community, the theme community, right? It keep evolving, right? Every day there are new hundreds and thousands of new plugins and themes are coming into this entire ecosystem, right? And not every developer is much security savvy, right? Definitely somewhere or other there might be some loopholes, and as a hacker, all we need is just one loophole, right? One vulnerability we have to find in the system, and that's good enough for me to penetrate, right? So I don't have to be a master in WordPress. Just that's one of the things I want to highlight here. To be an hacker, to hack or to attack WordPress, probably I don't need to know in and out of, unlike developers, right? To know every features and functionality of WordPress. I just need probably one loophole, right? So these are various kind of attacks we have been seeing. Uh, Majorly, I see themes and plugins that being targeted, and as a result, obviously, wherever these plugins and themes are used, they're inherently visible, vulnerable. Now, if we go a little deep uh, and see, this is a little bit deep dive into this entire attack space to understand that what are the various kind of attacks are there, because we are seeing only plugins and things, but is that the only way people are exploiting today WordPress, right? We are seeing that there are different other pattern or category of attacks we're seeing in the industry, which is being used against WordPress based websites. While we're saying more than 50% is plugins and theme based attack, but there is still a majority chunk which is also on brute force attacks, right? Where actually the brute force, like your login, obviously credentials, people try to brute force, people try to guess. If you don't know what is brute force attack, it's a very simple. It's basically I'm trying to guess your username, password, and try to attack, right? Then there are some part is also on the core. Core is nothing but your WordPress as a software. Maybe the WordPress software itself has some vulnerabilities which has been detected or identified, and people try to attack that. The other interesting aspect is hosting. A lot of time we try to use a hosting service provider, right? Hosted WordPress hosted services, right? A lot of this kind of hosting services today give you a platform which is already PaaS kind of thing, right? Which is integrated and WordPress is deployed and everything. So a lot of time what happened is, the hosting service itself, got compromised. And when the hosting service, which is could be one layer above, right? It's like a underlying layer, which gets compromised, you inherently become vulnerable, right? It's no longer about a WordPress, but about the underlying platform, which is getting compromised, right? And that's a very interesting. And there's one, very popular incident happened in recent past. We'll get into that. But yeah, there are a few others: password thefts, file permission, phishing attacks, social engineering attacks. People try to create a fake login, WordPress login pages, try to send you and stuff like that also happen. And obviously, FTPs and other kind of brute force attacks also happen if your FTP service is open. But if you see majorly, I think almost 70 to 80% is actually this three things is taking care of it. This is how big this entire attack surface is, right? Again, this doesn't mean that you are vulnerable, but it is always good to know that what are the other kind of possible scenarios somebody is trying to attack you, and that's so that you can take necessity actions. And now, regarding the hosting service, this was actually one interesting incident happened in November. I don't know how many of you know about it, but GoDaddy has a data breach, and they actually exposed almost 1.2 million WordPress, I think the account details as part of this database which has been breached, and that's what has been published. So yeah, as I said, a lot of time is about the hosting service provider also, and unfortunately, you don't have control over that. You probably are only owning the WordPress component. However, there are certain things you can do which can, to some extent, give you a protection when this kind of scenario happens, right? So that we'll also touch upon that. What if your data gets breached for some sources, and can you actually do some mitigations even after that, right? I will not be checking the chats or questions. I will probably go through it, and probably we will do all the Q&A at the end of it. But in case anyone has a question, probably Vinay, you can actually just stop me at the end.
Absolutely. Yes. We are taking note of all questions. We can ask it in the end.
Great. Thank you so much. Right. Okay. Now let's deep dive into how this happens. This is where we come in, right? We are the offensive. We are the ethical hackers, per se, we say, right? So in terms of our background, both people who knows me or who don't know me, like we are all from cybersecurity, like an offensive security background, right? We are ethical hackers. We know how to hack. However, we don't use it for malicious intent. We use it to protect companies. Like yeah, so we are say people who are here to know how to hack and then use it to protect you, right? So this is one simulation or scenario where we try to scenario where we play and show you what can be done. So let's say I'm a hacker. I wanted to attack some WordPress site. So there are different type of attacks we do in the hacking world, right? One is called targeted attack. We target a specific website and we attack. And one is just we are fooling around, right? We just window shopping kind of. I said that, I for some reason I'm feeling bored and I want to just see how is my hacking skill against WordPress based websites, right? So what do we do there? So if I'm just going out public, and openly, obviously the first step is I need to find all possible, let's say, the WordPress websites, right? I have to find the websites which actually built on WordPress, and so that I can then plan further. So how do you do that? So that's the first step. The first step is called Google Docking. Now, Google Docking, Google hacking, there are different terms as available, which is nothing but we use some specific keywords, intelligent keywords, to specifically ask Google to give us certain result which we are only interested in. So if you see this kind of thing, what essentially this says, the Google, can you please give me all the URL or the websites URL which you have indexed on your databases, where in the URL you have wp-login.php is mentioned. Now, if you say hypothetically, this means that I'm talking about entire website URL, where at any part of the URL there is a string which has wp-login.php. Now, essentially, this will have false positives, but however, majority of the search result will give us list of all the login pages which of certain websites which is built on WordPress and exposed into the in the internet, right, which is publicly accessible. So this, like this, there are a lot of other smart keywords are there. Now you can understand in URL, in title, we can put an ext keyword like ext colon php, which ensures that I am not only getting a URL out with this keyword, but also the file ext should be .php. So that way I can ensure that I'm only getting PHP file in the URL, and the URL should contain this. So that's how you narrow down our searches, so that we can get a very specific targeted website. Now, if this is there, using this kind of keyword, we definitely get list of all the WordPress, and obviously, we'll get into the demo in a minute. Second step, now let's say we got first step is all the WordPress sites. Now we got all the WordPress sites. Now, what is the second step? Second step is we call all these things called enumeration, right? So we need to now understand what kind of WordPress version is used, right? WordPress are different versions. Right? I want to know, is it using an older version of WordPress, is it using a later version, and like that. So for that, there are different ways, but one of the easier, pretty simpler way of doing it is using Wapalizer kind of plugins. Now, people who don't know what is Wapalizer, it's just a plugin which you can install on your Chrome browser. And what it does is actually, if you after you install onto your Chrome browser, if you kind of go to any website, this Wapalizer has an intelligence to figure out what kind of technology has been used to build that website, be it a client side or server side, Java, WordPress, PHP, .NET, JavaScript, jQuery, Bootstrap, any other third-party library you're using. It can give you those details and with all specific versions. So this is the pretty, obviously the purpose of this is something else, but we can connect the dots. As an attacker, our job is to misuse different tools and kind of, let's say, connect the dots. So this can give you a list of all specific versions. So now if I run this Wapalizer on those sites, I know what are using version 5 of WordPress, what are using version 4 of WordPress, what are using version 3 of WordPress, right? And that way we can figure out that, okay, these are using lower version of WordPress, which has this ABCD vulnerability, and eventually I can then try to trigger an attack, right? There's another interesting tool called WP Scan, which is a WordPress, obviously security scan kind of tool, which is an automated script. It's available in kind of a lot of security distros. You can download and install also on your own. What essentially it does, it actually, if you give an URL of a WordPress website, it will crawl through this application and it will give you a list of all possible plugins, what version of the plugin they're using, if it is enabled, XML RPC is enabled there or not, what kind of PHP server is there, all this kind of findings it gives you, as an output after doing the scanning. And this is pretty efficient, pretty effective, right? So this is another way we get more information about the website, because the first step of of an attack is get as much information or not. So so that more information we get, we can actually trigger the attack more efficient, right? So with this kind of data, we gather enough information, and then we actually use some sort of exploit tool to exploits, right? And there are different tools are there to attack exploit. You can use custom exploit and everything, but one of the most popular tool is called Metasploit. Using Metasploit, they have a lot of inbuilt, auth bypass, remote code execution, RC, kind of vulnerability exploits. So all we have to do now that once I know that specific plugin or something is installed, which using the previous scanner I find, I just configure my Metasploit, which has I know that exploit which works on that specific plugin. I simply just run it, and it will just exploit and give me an access to the server. And when I'm saying access, I actually get into the server, right? I get a control over the server without knowing the password and everything, right? This is as straightforward as that. Although, obviously, you understand to do this, you need to understand and learn those tools, whatever tools I'm mentioning, right? But once you know how this tool works, you can actually build this attack strategy and you can do it. Now, why I'm saying this to you guys? Because if you are a security savvy person, you can use the same technique to simulate an attack for your own websites, right? And when you do that, obviously you will also understand what are the problems there on your own websites, and you can fix it. Now, one disclaimer here: we never or we don't encourage or recommend to do this kind of thing on someone else's websites, because these are all, obviously, if you do this kind of attack and exploit it, these are not, obviously legal, or you are actually doing something which is considered to be a crime, right? So just a disclaimer: this session is purely for training purposes. Uh, it's just for us to share the knowledge and understanding so that you can use this to protect your website. We don't encourage or and ask you to do any kind of attack against someone else's websites. Okay, so please use it responsibly, and if at all you are doing that, please don't come back to us. We are not responsible for that, right? Yes. So that's pretty much what we have in terms of theory. And now let's quickly jump into the demo. So as I said, Anshul is the hacker in the house. He's quickly walk you through this same steps and show you how this works. And I'm going to stop sharing. And I think let me give the access to Anshul. I'm going to make you, Anshul, do you have permission to share the screen? Can you please check?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, great. Yes, over to you.
Thank you, sir. So now let's take a look at what an attacker needs to do if he wants to follow the steps that we mentioned, that sir mentioned earlier: enumeration, getting more information, and then searching for ways to exploit your WordPress website in case it is vulnerable, and then they can get access to your server. So the first step that we mentioned, you run some Google Docs, you run some Google queries. So the query that I have run here is in URL wp-login.php. So now the results that I'm getting, Google is going to show me the results which contain this text wp-login.php as part of the URL. So all the pages that have been returned here contain this text. So let's say if I take this one, this just some random page that I've taken, and I go to that website. Again, just to reiterate, I'm not going to be hacking into this website or performing any sort of illegal access here. This is just to show you how attackers work when they use these Google Docs. So an attacker has found this, and now what he's going to do, he's going to be running this Vapalizer plugin, which is basically a browser plugin. You can use it in Firefox, you can use it in Chrome if you're using that. And when you click on this, see what it shows you. It's telling me that on this website, the CMS that is being used, the content management system, that is WordPress. It's also showing me the version. So WordPress version 2.0.5. Now, okay, this is a pretty outdated version and you should definitely not be using such an old version. Also, if I come to our website for data secure and I run this Vapalizer here, again, it's going to tell me that we are using WordPress. So our own site is also using WordPress. And we are using 5.8. Okay, so this is a recent version. So that is what we're using. Now, for the purpose of this demonstration, we have set up a special website. Let's come to this. So this is just a demo WordPress instance that we're using here. Now, if I run this plugin here, so it tells me that, okay, the WordPress version here is 4.8.18, and this is more than a year old, at least. So this is essential information to an attacker. Let's say I'm trying to hack into this website. Now, this is very important information. I know that this is an outdated version. Now I can go ahead and run WP scan, get even more details. As an attacker, it's very simple to use this tool. All I need to do is write WP scan URL, specify the URL where the target website is hosted. And you can see this -EU. This I'm just specifying.
Anshul, can you just move it little up, top of the screen, or middle of the screen?
Yes,
So you see, yeah, I think this is better, or maybe increase the font. Is it possible?
I'll have to this size.
This is better. Thank you.
So this -EU option I've also specified. So what it's going to do is it's going to try and enumerate, or it's going to try and figure out what users are present. So it's going to figure out what usernames are present on this WordPress website. So now I have run this scan previously and I have the results here with me. So this is where the result starts. Okay, so it tells me a lot of things here. It gives me a lot of useful information. So it's telling me, first of all, what's the server that's running. So Apache is being run on the target system. The PHP version is 7.1.11. Then it's also telling me about XML RPC. So this is basically an endpoint which allows you to post content to your WordPress blog using some certain mobile clients. In more than 50% of WordPress websites, this is never going to be used, but it can pose a serious security issue as well. And this is enabled on this website. So that's one way I already know how I can attack this website. Then it tells me some more details like, okay, I found a WordPress README file. It tells me about some plugins that, okay, this is some must-use plugins. These are installed. Then it tells me the version again, okay, so this is the same thing that Vapalizer was telling us. It's telling me what theme is in use, and it's also giving me this sort of exclamation mark that, okay, this version is out of date, it's an old version, so please update that. And it's also going to tell me what kind of users are present. So it has identified that there is an admin account which is present on this website. So let us go back to the website and see what else we can do here.
So just to add to that, please understand one thing here. We have not logged into WordPress, right? All we did is using WP scan, just pass the URL. So as of now, we are just working as an outsider, and we're still able to get all this data. Yes, Anshu.
So as previously we mentioned, WordPress has this wp login.php as part of its login page URL. So if I see this website, I know it's running WordPress, I can simply attempt to go to that page. So what I'll do is wp login.php, and I have this open here. And I already found out that, okay, I have an admin user. I can, as an attacker, that makes it easier for me. I already know a username to get into the website. And older WordPress versions had this serious issue that if you entered a username with an incorrect password, it would still tell you that, okay, whether the username you entered was correct or not. So I can try, let's say I try a random password here. Okay, I don't know the password. Let's try a random password. I can try to log in, and okay, so I'm getting the same result. So as an attacker, since I know the username already, it becomes easier for me to brute force my way into the website. And in a lot of installations, in a lot of WordPress instances, the default password for this username was admin itself. So I can try that. Let's see what happens. Okay, it seems that I have access, and that was the correct password. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the plugins, because as we saw earlier, plugins are usually the way WordPress websites get hacked. So I come to this plugin section from the dashboard, and this is a list of all the plugins that are installed on this WordPress instance. So you can see the name of the plugin and what version is installed, along with the details of what exactly that plugin does. So there are a lot of plugins here. Even if one of these plugins is vulnerable, okay, let's say you are using 10 plugins, even if one out of those 10 is vulnerable, has some kind of security issue, some vulnerability, then that might grant an attacker complete access to your server. And let's say, okay, I try to focus on this one. I want to look up, okay, does this have any sort of vulnerabilities? Simple file list, this plugin. And what is the version? 4.2.2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to Google. I'm going to search for any vulnerabilities or any exploits for this particular plugin. And as it turns out, we have a lot of results which point to the fact that, okay, this is a plugin that is vulnerable and it has the security issue that can be exploited. As an attacker, my next step is I'll come to my terminal, my command line interface, and I'll be using a tool called Metasploit. So this is a Metasploit framework, MSF console. So it's a completely command line tool. I can go ahead and look for simple underscore file. And it tells me that, okay, there is an exploit here for this vulnerability. And what is it? It's a simple file list, unauthenticated remote code execution. As an attacker, a remote code execution or an RCE, which is quite commonly known as, it's kind of a jackpot. Okay, if I get remote code execution, that means I can remotely execute any commands that I want over a target system. So I have complete access to that system over command line. If I can get this to work on the target, that means regardless of whatever they have configured, regardless of whatever security measures they have taken, I will be able to hack into that system. So let's see how we can do that. Use 0. And now this plugin is selected. I have just a few options to configure here. Okay, so you need to tell it what is the target host. You can provide the domain name or the IP address. You provide the port number. And since it is a connection, so you are already providing the target host and the target port, you also need to specify your own IP and your own port number so that the connection can be created. And once you specify all these options, you can simply run it. So in order to specify any option, all you have to do is set rhost, so that is the remote host's IP address. So you can set this. And similarly, you can set other options as well. Once you do that, okay, so we have already done this and we've run this exploit. And as you can see, it has told me at the end of all these steps that a session has been opened between my system and the target system. So what has happened here is I used that vulnerability. I found an exploit for it. I ran it in Metasploit, and now I have hacked into that server. So now I can get all the information about that system. I can run different commands on that system. I can steal some data from that system. If you look at it from an attacker's point of view, you now have complete control over your target system, over the system, over the server where this WordPress instance is being hosted currently. And it took all of hardly 10 minutes. So in case your WordPress instance is not configured properly, if there's something that is out of date, or if there's a security issue, that is all an attacker needs to do in order to gain access to your WordPress instance. So now continuing with the presentation, let's talk about what can be done in order to remedy the situation. Right, we know that, okay, this is the steps that we followed so far. This is from an attacker's point of view. Let's look at the solution as well. So we're going to go ahead and look at that now.
So Minak, time check. How are you doing in terms of time?
Yeah, we're doing great. Please continue. We want to know now, how do we protect our sites? Yeah, you cannot just show us, yeah, hacking and leave it. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Okay, definitely. Now, before I move on to that, I would also like to discuss what are some indicators of compromise. Okay, so what are basically some signs that you might see on your website, and they would indicate that, okay, someone has hacked into your website. This might not necessarily be the case. I mean, someone might hack into your website and they might not leave any signs of their presence there. But in most cases, you'll see at least a few of these signs, a few of these indicators, which will tell you that there is something wrong and that you need to remediate. So let's say, you suddenly lose access to your WordPress account. Your credentials are not working. That is a major sign that someone has hacked onto your WordPress instance and they have changed your credentials. Another thing is malicious content on your website, like Minang, the stuff you mentioned earlier. Those Japanese.
I can see a lot of things
Yeah.
that happen from here. Yeah.
So that was a clear sign that, okay, your website was hacked. Then you have, in case you're using something like Google Analytics and you're seeing that, okay, you're getting visitors from a location or from a country that normally does not send traffic to your website. That is also something to keep in mind. That is something to monitor. That might be indicating that something is wrong with your website. Or in case suddenly you have a fall in traffic. Normally your website is performing good, but suddenly there's a drop in the number of visitors who are accessing your content. That is another indicator that your website is hacked. Or let's say you try to look up something, or people tell you that, okay, they try to search your website in the search engine, in Google or Bing. When they're searching for you, they're getting some strange results. They're getting some weird results that don't make sense. That would also indicate someone has changed some content on your website. Another thing is, let's say you are using something, you have some email server setup that you regularly send emails to your subscribers regarding new posts, new articles on your blog. And if you get issues in that, that is another indicator. If suddenly your website is not accessible, suddenly your website goes down, that is a major issue. That is a major sign that, okay, this is the work of someone who's trying to attack your website. An attacker or hacker, they might have gotten access to your server and maybe they deleted your web pages, maybe they deleted all your data. Another thing is, if you can see unknown files in your root folder. So wherever you're hosting your WordPress website, let's say you're seeing a lot of new files that you never put there, or you say that some of your files are missing. That is also an indicator. Or let's say you see that there are some users, there are new users, and you don't recognize creating those users. Or, there are more admin users than you normally have assigned. And the last point here is, let's say there is some modification, some change in an event that you have scheduled using your WordPress website. And someone has come in and scheduled events without your permission or without your knowledge. So these are basically the 10 signs that you should look out for in order to make sure that your WordPress website is not hacked. If you see any of these things, if you see this sort of behavior happening on your WordPress instances, on your WordPress websites, then it is time to do something about it. And now let's take a look at what we can do to protect our own WordPress websites. So one of the most important things, one of the most important steps that we can take as admins, as owners of WordPress websites, is to install all updates regularly. Now, in a lot of cases, you have automatic updates that you can set up, and your software will be updated as soon as a new version comes in. But that's not always the case. And it's not just your core WordPress software that you need to update. You also need to update all your plugins, all your themes. So everything that you're using there, every single thing, it needs to be up to date, and you must be running the current versions of all software that you're making use of on your website. So ideally, this is what your website page should look like. Your WordPress dashboard should look like. Everything is up to date. You have the latest WordPress version, you have the latest plugins, and your themes are also up to date. So if this is what your dashboard looks like, then that is good. That is a very good sign. Now, coming back to the issue of plugins. Now, see, for WordPress, most of its functionality is derived from the plugins. So plugins are basically different add-ons that you can add depending on what functionality, depending on what features you're using. So it is very important that while you're selecting a plugin, when you're installing that, you keep in mind certain aspects. So first thing is the plugin popular? So if I'm installing a plugin, I need to make sure that okay, the plugin is not just being used by a couple hundred people. It's better if you're using a plugin which is used by more people, because that means that the plugin is popular, it's a good plugin, and it also gives the developer an incentive to keep their plugins updated regularly, which comes to the second point here. Does the plugin receive regular updates? In case there is a security issue in one version of the plugin, will the developer work on that? Will the developer quickly release a fix in order to fix the issue? So if you see a plugin that is, let's say, last updated more than a year ago, then that is definitely a red flag and you should avoid those plugins. Another thing is, does the developer actively respond to queries? Now, this might vary, based on who the developer is, whether it's a team, whether it's a single person who is maintaining that plugin. But it's very important to choose the right plugins so that your website remains secure. Another thing which I think is relevant is that you need to have your website over HTTPS. Even though it's 2022, this is still something that needs to be said, because we see a lot of websites that are still running over HTTP. It is this is a very bad thing if your website runs over HTTP. So just you need to keep in mind that as soon as possible, you need to get a TLS certificate. It was previously known as SSL. But that's an outdated protocol now. So we call them as TLS certificates. So make sure that you're using HTTPS on your website and you have a TLS certificate. And these days you can get these certificates for free from organizations like Let's Encrypt. And if you're using a hosting provider for your WordPress website, then even they offer a lot of options where you get a TLS certificate for free for your WordPress instance. Now, another thing to keep in mind, as we've just seen previously, there are WP login pages and WP admin pages. These are the pages that attackers look for. And if they find these pages, then they are going to try and hack your website. And as we've seen previously, these can be easily discovered with the help of some simple Google Docs. So I can run a Google Doc for in URL WP admin and I'll get all the WP admin pages, or I can do that for WP login as we've done previously. So what you can do is either you can restrict access to these pages for certain IPs, or you can add some password-based authentication to these pages so that not everyone will be able to access this page. And another very important thing you can do is to enforce an account lockout mechanism so that if someone tries a lot of incorrect passwords, which attackers do in a brute force attempt, then you can lock that account for a specified period of time. And this is something we'll also cover at the end when we're talking about a plugin which can help with this. Another important point is to keep a strong password, because if you're using everything that you can to enhance your website security, but your password is weak, then it's all irrelevant. And WordPress itself has a lot of plugins. One of these is Passer. It's a very good plugin, and you can use this to enforce password security rules for every WordPress user on your instance. And you can also encourage your users to keep password managers in mind, like you have KeePass, LastPass, OnePassword. So this helps people in keeping unique passwords across all accounts. Otherwise, what can happen is one account gets hacked, and with the help of that, whichever other accounts are using those passwords, they all get hacked. So that is also something to keep in mind. Another point is to enable multi-factor authentication for your accounts. And you should also be trying to educate your users and be aware of social engineering. It's basically an attempt where attackers try to trick you into revealing your credentials to them. So under no circumstances should you be giving your credentials to a third party. And of course, proper access control. So this means basically that if a user on your website just needs to, let's say, post an article, then you do not have to give them admin privileges. You give them privileges only for the role that they require. For example, here we have this screenshot of a WordPress instance where there are 3 admin users. So this could be a serious security issue here. What if one of their accounts get hacked? Then the attacker has access to your entire website. So you also need to keep this in mind. And you need to have regular backups of your data. That's always a good idea, because in case you do get hacked, in spite of all the steps you have taken, if you have a backup, then you can quickly restore all that data and you won't have to go through the hassle of cleaning up your website again. So taking backups is also very easy with WordPress. There are many plugins to help you with this. If you're talking about the free options, you can use stuff like Updraft and Jetpack for your backups. And keep in mind that you use the backups on a separate server so that if your server gets hacked, at least your backups are secure. And WordPress also has certain solutions, certain plugins which you can use. You can enable these as a web application firewall, and it can help you prevent against a lot of different kinds of attacks, especially with this DDoS, which is basically a denial of service where an attacker tries to bring down your website by sending a large volume of requests. So there are some plugins, Security Firewall, WordFence, Cloudflare. These are a lot of good plugins that you can use. And okay, this is something that we also touched upon during the demo. So the older versions of WordPress, they had this admin as a default username. So whenever you would create an instance, the first user there would be admin, and the password would also be admin. And this is common knowledge, common target for attackers, and they would just use admin and log into your website. So you need to make sure that you do not have this username enabled on your instance. Now we're just talking about some tools. So we've seen that we can use WP scan for enumeration. We've seen we can use Metasploit for exploiting any vulnerabilities that we find. There's also CMS scan. We have CMS map if you want to get more information about a target website. And if you're talking about brute force attacks, so there are tools like Hydra, Burp Soup, and these can be easily used to perform brute force attack on any website. Now, talking about the defenders side, there is a plugin called WordFence, and I'll be showing this. Let me just say that. So what you can do is you can go to plugins, you can go to add new and just search for WordFence security. So this is a free plugin that you can add to your WordPress instance, and it has, let's try again, okay. It has a lot of options. It has a lot of features that it allows you to configure and protect against a lot of the things that we've seen previously. So let's go back here.
Angshu, just a time
Yes,
check. We are running little time, so yeah, I think let's try to wrap this up so that we'll have some time for Q&A also.
Okay, so I'll just show a couple of options that are very important here with WordFence and Reliant. Okay, so with WordFence, one of the most important features that it allows you is to enable multi-factor authentication. And we talked about brute forcing and account logout mechanisms. That is also something you can easily configure here with this WordFence plugin for your website. So if you want to secure your own WordPress websites, you can come to the plugin section, install WordFence, and you can configure some options that will help you protect your WordPress instance. Okay, so this is quite easy to operate, and you can simply set some options here, like you can enable rate limiting. Rate limiting is basically when you block a certain IP or block a certain user from accessing your website if you see that you're receiving a lot of requests from them. So there are a lot of different options that allow you to configure that. And you can come in here and also go to brute force protection. So you can log out accounts after how many failures. Now this is the ideal number is usually 3 or not more than 5. So if someone tries to log in and they get the wrong password 3 times, then their account will be locked out. And how long do you want that account to be logged out, or how long do you want to monitor for this login failure? All of these can be easily configured. So if you're running a WordPress website, definitely you should look into this and secure your website. So that's it regarding the WordPress WordFence plugin.
Yes.
Over to you, Basu sir.
Thank you. So let me just share my screen. Okay, so
Jonathan, we're going to answer the questions. We have questions from Jonathan, Yuvraj, Akash as well. We have a dedicated Q&A session happening. We're going to show you our Get Secured, a product that will help as a startup. Is going to help you protect your startup. Yes. So what does Get Secured do?
Yes. So so what we're trying to do here is this is a product which can give you like a holistic overview of security. So what essentially we are saying that when you have a problem, your company from a security or data protection point of view, there are primarily there are 4 layers of security. First is called digital asset. So this WordPress sites, which is like let's say a domain or subdomains, right? These are all the various digital assets you have. Your employee email addresses, right? Those are all digital assets. So using our product, what we do is we help you to scan through the internet, like how you see, for WordPress we have done the scanning. We scan through the internet and we help you to identify that is any of your digital asset is exposed or not, and if it is exposed, what kind of exposure is this? Is this been breached or not? For example, your website, how many domain subdomain servers you have, what kind of technology it's used, as well as obviously this will also help you to see is your employee email addresses are breached or stolen or not. So that's called asset discovery, because as a company you should know how much data you own and how much of that data is publicly exposed, and is there any data breach happened or not. Second is site audit. What essentially this, if you have now a web application, like a website, you can do a scan. You can do a security vulnerability scan using our tool. This tool will help you to actually do automated scan across all your website and give you all the vulnerabilities found in the websites. So that's called a web application audit. Third is cloud audit, because as you said, there is a hosting platform, right? You host their web applications onto some server, and majorly people use AWS cloud. So we right now also help you to do a cloud security audit, where if your infrastructure hosted in AWS cloud, you can scan that and see is there any configuration exposure has happened or not. For example, by mistake you have exposed your S3 buckets, or probably your servers, IP address or ports are exposed, or maybe you have not enabled two-factor authentication. Some passwords are really not very strong. So we help you to identify those kind of things using our tool. And last but not the least, we also club this thing together and help you to identify, does this mean any compliance violation there or not? So if you're a company which is having ISO 27001 compliance requirements or GDPR requirement or probably a SOC 2 compliance requirements, what we try to do is compliance is the list of guidelines, and these are all findings of vulnerabilities or critical, kind of threats to your company. We try to match make them and kind of say, okay, because of this vulnerability or this threat, your this compliance regulation or compliance control is not matched, so that you can know that what kind of security compliance impact you have from an outside point of view. So this is what we've been doing as Get Secured, and this is the tool which is like a point and click, because our vision with this tool is make security simplified and affordable, right? So we want everybody to onboard and start using security even they're at an early stage, as a solo founder, as an early stage startups. So we are here to support you guys. So that's pretty much what Get Secured does. And along with that, we also do managed services. So if at all you have some complex application which you want to do security audits, you want us to do a threat architecture review, threat modeling, you want us to do some trainings, we are happy to do those kind of things as a managed service app. But overall, Get Secured is the platform which is a one-stop solution where ideally it should help you to give you all possible kind of vulnerability detection, asset exposure detection from an hacker or attacker point of view as an outside world. So that's pretty much we have in terms of Get Secured, and we are now, I think, open for Q&A.
All right. So I'm gonna be quickly sharing my screen and showing you the Get Secured that we have over here, the lifetime deal that we are running at PitchGround. And I think you can see my screen as well. And this is like a giveaway that we run. So some of the names have been here. We're gonna announce it. So if you see your name from here, please attend our webinars, because with every single webinar, we do these sorts of giveaways. So coming back to Get Secured, this is Get Secured AI. It starts at $245 a lifetime deal. And you can check it out from here, grab your lifetime deal, because security products like this, if you go out in the market and if you usually check it, what happens? They charge around $200 to $300 a month. That's right. You can go ahead, check it out, not take my word for it. A minimum of $100 a month from what I've seen. And you can get this for $245 lifetime, and all your lifetime plan details are mentioned over here on the website. We have plan A, we have plan B, and we have plan C. 3 plans. That's it. With plan C is a ridiculous value because it has unlimited scans per month. That is insane. If you're like an agency, like a marketing agency, here's what you can be doing. You could be taking in clients and scan their websites and provide a detailed report of their websites on their security issues that they have, and etc. And you could be charging money for that. Go on Fiverr, check it out. Many people would be doing this already. That means there's a market for it, and they might be using monthly tools for that. You could be using you could be paying once, and you could be doing scans every single month. If it's unlimited scans, you could be taking any more clients for it, right? So this is the plan C. I think this is of ridiculous value. If you're plan A, if you're like a startup, you just want to check your site. If it's all right, if you want to check your digital assets, if you want to check your code is all right, then plan A is good for you. Plan B, you can, of course, do the client side of things, but I 100% recommend the plan C part of it. And if you need any support on how to use the tool, if you're stuck anywhere, the tool is super simple to use. You'll never find a simple security tool ever from what I've tried. It's not like those fancy UIs which you just saw, which is green text on it. No, it's super easy to understand. It's made with you in mind, the regular consumer. That's what Tamagna's mission is. From what when we signed up Tamagna on PitchGround for Get Secured, he told me that he wanted to bring these security tools from a layman's perspective, make it easier for people to get into security, to scan their websites, to fix vulnerabilities. And that is what the scanning tool Get Secured does. So this is what we're having, the lifetime deal. I'm going to paste it in the chat down below. You can check it out. And right now we're going to take the questions you have around WordPress, you have around Get Secured, lifetime deal, every single thing. We're going to take questions live. So let's look at the very first question that we had from Akash. So Akash had a question like how to identify which plugin is safe and which one is unsafe. That's a really good question, Akash.
Right. So I think in some part we have already told, which is Anshul has mentioned that you look into the creator, right? The maintain who the developers, right? You know, is this plugin is maintained or not? How frequently they are putting patches. So that way you know this plugin is live, this plugin is active. That's number one, right? Second is obviously how many people are using it. No, that gives you kind of a validation that okay, this is well used. That is one part. But if you want to little deep dive, to be honest, what we recommend is this plugins code are pretty simple. It's open source. You can download the code, and there are some source code scanning tools are there. Obviously, that is not part of. I mean, we cannot go deep dive with the interest of time, but there is source code audit tools are there. You can find online. You can put this code there and scan the code, and that tool can tell you if this code has any vulnerability or not, and that way you can see is there any problem in the code. And if that says good, probably you can fairly trust. Kind of this plugin is reliable, including all the checks are true.
Awesome. So let's look at another question that we have. Jonathan is asking, I was going to ask about WordPress hardening, chmod modification, and how about, I might have missed this, but changing the login page. So at least bots crawling the web can't just out of the box attack you.
Well, that's a pretty long question. Okay,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
so what you have been saying is, sorry, Anshul, do you want to add something? Feel
Yes,
free to
sir.
pitch in. Yeah.
About WordPress hardening, so a lot of the things that we mentioned during the presentation, they help you with WordPress hardening. So this was all about hardening your WordPress instance so you can protect against attacks. Chmod modification might not help you a lot because ultimately the goal is to protect your instance. And in case you're using some hosting provider or you're on a shared host, you might not have the option of doing that. So while that can work, it is definitely something that will not work in a lot of scenarios. And changing the login page also, that's a very good option. And you can change it and you can give the URL only to people, only to admins or people who need to sign in. But the thing is, a lot of WordPress websites, what they do is they allow users to sign in and create articles and post articles. So if they change the login page in this case, that might result in some inconvenience for those users. So while that is also an option, it might not work in all situations.
Absolutely. And we have questions coming in from Nicholas and James as well. Nicholas asks, what tool that is on the market right now would be the closest to this suite for WP users? Which suite, Nicholas? Do you want to elaborate? And James has a question, says, in the meantime, let's take James' question. He asks, can you share that website to check if the plugin are vulnerable?
Sorry, what is the question?
Can you share the website to check if the plugins are vulnerable?
Okay, you mean the source code, the one I just mentioned, where you can actually, right. This is the
Yes.
website. What I'm talking about, what you need to look is actually is source code scanning tool, source code security scanning tools. I've used a lot of enterprise versions. Obviously, there are some free open source versions are there. Anshul, do you have anything on top of your mind? You can, if you have anything, you can share right away. Otherwise, we can probably share the Facebook community itself. But what you need to look for is secure source code security scanning tools, especially on the PHPs, because I think that's what pretty much is being used here. Is what you need to use.
Awesome, awesome.
So
And
what?
somebody in the comments have shared about virus total to scan the website and scan the source code, I believe. Yeah.
I'm not sure if virus total solves this purpose, but obviously, if it Last I remember it wasn't, but if it has right now, I know, okay, it would be a good thing. One thing I forgot to tell you that lot of times that the owner, site owner, they don't update the websites, upgrade their WordPress version because of the fear that the plugins might stop working, right? Because there might be maybe the WordPress version is upgraded, maybe the plugin providers have not upgraded their code, right? There's no backward compatibility, and a lot of times that might break. And this fear is there, the fear of change. That actually stops, but I think that also is a problem because of which a lot of these threats and these vulnerabilities are actually in the action, which works in the wild. Because if you don't upgrade, obviously there might be the problems will be there.
Got it. Got it. And we have a question about Get Secured. I think Marcel is asking, does
Mhm.
it work for multi-site?
So when you say multi-site, what do you mean? Because what we
So
do is
WordPress has this multi-site thing with it. It's called WP multi-site.
okay. So right now, what WordPress Get Secured requires is your URL of your website. As the moment you put the website address, which is let's say abc.com or no,
So
xyz.com.
multi-site is basically like it helps you manage like multiple WordPress websites in a single
Correct.
dashboard. Yeah.
So all we need is it actually I need the domain name. So if you're managing multiple website, eventually you will map it to in the DNS to a domain name, right? As long as you give the domain names, we are our tool will be able to scan it.
Awesome. Awesome. So yes, Marcel, you can. And also you can also scan AWS server as well. So we have a question from Nicholas. As I said further up, anyone running a WordPress website without the security update built from 5 days ago to fix the massive SQL and XSS vulnerability stored holes in any version before 5.8.3.1, especially the multi-site version, it's nuts. Yes, without the security update. Absolutely, guys, you gotta be updating. As Nicholas said that the previous builds of WordPress is having all sorts of bugs and the massive SQL and vulnerability. So
Right.
do update it. I get that. I get it, especially from a business owner's point of view. I've seen that people don't update WordPress sites. So, for example, if WordPress 5.8 is released, we have a thing among marketers, this thing that okay, 5.8 would be buggy, we'll wait for 5.8.3 or something so that 5.8 of bugs would be solved. But then you're missing out on security as well. That is something you got to take note on, not just the bugs. So that's what it is. My WP auto updates at the moment. Yep, some I have kept to auto update as well, but some people, many websites, if you see it, the plugins do not get auto updated. So auto update is probably your best bet in terms of security. In terms of stability, I'm not sure. Okay, so yeah, don't blame it on me when we say yeah, we kept it on auto update and suddenly it crashed. So yep, that's what it is. And thank you so much for sharing inputs, Nicholas. We're going to update it. And James, you got this, man. You got this. Do we have any more questions? Why those hacking tools like Metasploit are openly available? That's a good question.
That's a very good. So I think, as I say, that these are the tools which has been used by security researchers. It's like people like us, and to be precise, Metasploit is created by a person called H.D. Moore. He's a very well respected person in our industry. So we create this kind of tools for research purposes, right? To actually help security researchers to identify. Now it's up to us to see that whether we want to use it or we want to misuse it, right? So majority of the community we use it for greater good. That's what we believe to we would like to believe. We use it for purpose of hardening. We helping to create awareness, trainings, and all this kind of stuff. However, yeah, these are all open source project. Like any other open source project, it's up to you. What do you so, so yeah, I think it's we cannot do it. We have to live with it. That's what it is.
Absolutely. So do we have any more questions, guys, regarding WordPress security, regarding get secured for your startup? Do we have any more tools that have been coming in? I also told you how you could be earning money from it. That's right. I mean, we have had security tools before, not something of this extent like Get Secure. We've had a tool called Virus Die. I'm sure if you've been joining our webinars and a part of PitchGround, you might be knowing it. It's like an alternative to WordFence, but WordFence and Get Secured are like totally different projects altogether. WordFence, etc., are just limited to WordPress. But with Get Secured, you could be scanning your server to check for vulnerabilities. You could be scanning just the domain name. That's it. You don't, whether it's WordPress or not, just the domain name, you could enter and you could be scanning. So we recommend people not to use your competitor's website on Get Secured. You have to use your own website, and that's what it is. Or the websites if you have permission on, like your client's website. Do not use these security tools on other websites. That's not ethical hacking, guys. That's not ethical at all. So any more questions do we have over here on Facebook, on Zoom? I guess none. So guys, how was this webinar? Did you like this webinar? Did you gain some information about it? Did you gain some knowledge today? Did you learn something new today? Tell us in the chat down below. We would love to see your feedback about this webinar, and this feedback helps us produce more such webinars like this to you, to give you more value every single day and week. So let's see, we have more comments coming in. Sunny says, definitely, thank you so much. Gained more awareness, absolutely, Sunny. And eye opener, oh awesome. On Facebook we have like eye opener, great, interesting. For those who joined in late, you can definitely watch the replay. Do not worry. You can watch the replay. The replay would be there. It won't go anywhere. We've showed you how the hackers think, gather information, and attack the website. And that was really informative for me too. So let me look at any. The big issue is okay. People are just chatting among themselves about auto updates. That's like a new debate altogether, guys. But yeah, so let's not talk about it. But yeah,
we definitely want people to think about security. And so one thing I will tell you with my obviously my almost 2 decades of experience in security is the proportion of security person versus total engineers is very very low, right? We have, let's say, 1:10, right? And as one person we cannot protect the company. We definitely need more people. So what we are trying to do from our side is, as I said, we're trying to make security simplified and affordable, because these are the two reasons we see people don't adopt security, because they feel security is complicated or they think it's a costly affair. However, we want to also create more awareness and encourage people. Please take it seriously. Talk among yourselves, brainstorm. Create your own interest groups, smaller groups, micro groups focusing on WordPress security. Maybe focus on auto update security. Maybe one group. You never know, right? So create that, talk, and that's how we can actually build a more secure community. Because my data is scattered across multiple websites. If you don't protect your websites where my data is there, I cannot feel safe, right? So we want everybody to do the enough due diligence on this. So that's my sense on this.
Yes. And those are wise words to end this webinar. Comments have been coming in on Facebook. Great share by James. Awesome. And Nicholas says he restreamed this webinar to his students. That is insane. That's happened for the very first time over here. Somebody is taking this webinar screen and restreaming it among their own community. Get secured simply, hashtag. People are commenting the hashtags as well. Awesome. That's right. So thank you so much, Tamagna. Thank you so much, Anshul, for demonstrating WordPress security to us, demonstrating how hackers think, how hackers gather information, how we can safeguard our WordPress websites. Guys, I don't want to get hacked anymore again. I'm going to talk about security. I'm going to keep myself updated. You too should keep yourself updated with the news, with your website plugins, all of it. And with this, we can end our webinar. Don't forget to check out the lifetime deal of Get Secured. It's on PitchGround. The links are posted down here already in the chat, in the comments, wherever you're watching this webinar on. And you could be safeguarding yourself from potential hackers and money loss, and gaining money in the end if you are doing it for your clients. Thank you so much for joining this webinar, guys. This was really informative, Tamagna And Anshul, thank you so much once again. And we're going to see you in upcoming webinars. We also have a webinar with Tamagna. He is going to show us how to safeguard your SaaS product. It is useful for your SaaS founders. If you have any SaaS founders in the house, tag them, because they are going to love this upcoming webinar so that they can protect their SaaS as well. Thank you so much, guys. We're going to see you in upcoming webinars. Happy Western. Yeah.